Hey everyone, welcome. Thanks so much for tuning in. I want to do a quick walkthrough of my template when I set up to record drums because the goal with the template is to save time, which will in turn save you money. And I know that this business is all about the music, but you also got to pay the bills. So let's dive in and open up Pro Tools and I'll show you what I've got going on here. So as you can see, when the dashboard pulls up, I'm already on my drum tracking version 12, which means I've gone through many iterations of this template when it comes to how I monitor the inputs, the plugins that I like, etc. So let's go ahead and choose a location for this. I'll just put it in my Kyle May folder, and we will do tutorial template and open this up so it'll open up all of my pre-saved IO plugins, routing, busing, all the above. Here we are inside of Pro Tools. First you can see that the number one track in here is the click track. Right now I have the click turned off because sometimes I have to tap tempo, and it's hard to tap tempo from audio files if the click is going at the same time as the audio file. So I keep it off to start. I have it routed to my headphones, which you can toggle on and off with the control, just like that. So if you're wondering how to send something to more than one output, you could do it that way, or you could use a send. I just have it this way. Then underneath, I have all of these work tape tracks. So if somebody has sent me some files to track to, I'll go ahead and import them into this work tape folder. It sometimes is a whole mix of tracks, or sometimes it's just a single two mix. Sometimes it's a band mix, and then a drum mix for me to kind of take reference cues from. So I've got that here, and then I have all of these work tapes all routed to this bus, and this bus just goes to line 1 and 2, which is my monitor outputs. So that way I can get my notepad out, write it out, take notes, do the chart thing, and then when I'm ready, I will change that routing to the drum headphones, so that way nothing is going to come through the speakers as I'm tracking the drums. Then onto my input section, I've got my kick in, kick out, and I've already got these routed to their kick buses. I've got all of these tracks muted just in case I accidentally leave the speakers on, or just in case these start coming through the headphones and then there's phasiness with the routing to the buses, because that creates latency. So if I'm sending the dry signal through this send, and then I'm also sending the wet signal after all of this processing, and that's going through my headphones, there's going to be a bit of latency, which will create some phasing, which will be really annoying to track to. So I've got all of the drum inputs muted, but I've got their separate sends to my headphones, all pre-fader. And what that means is that it's going to go to my headphones even though the track is muted here. So I've got kick in, kick out, and those are both routed to the kick bus with all of their plugins. Then I've got the snare microphones, I've got the condenser mic, I've got the dynamic mic, and then the condenser mic on the bottom. Same thing, these are all being routed to a snare bus with processing on the bus, but I've got these tracks muted, and then I've got these actual microphones sent to my in-ears, which show up over at the drum set station. Beyond that, I've got the hi-hat mic, the tom mic, both tom mics. I've got my ORTF microphones. I've got my spaced pair of microphones, which are the Coles, and then I've got the stereo rooms, which are new, that are up in the stairwell for some nice room sound. They're huge, it's great. And then the mono room mic. And then these are all being bused to this drum bus. So I've got hat through mono room being bussed to the drum bus. I've got the snare mics being bussed to a snare bus, and then that snare bus being bussed to the drum bus. And then the kick mics being bussed to the kick bus, and then that is being sent to the drum bus. So eventually everything all ends up in the same bus. And that is right here with some compression on it. And then I have this drum bus duplicated, and that creates the parallel bus because it's the same inputs going into the exact same aux returns, which are the buses. And then I've got different types of processing on those buses. So the drum bus, I'll have light compression. On the parallel bus, I'll do a little bit of distortion and some really heavy compression, but it won't be as loud as the drum bus. So as you can see, I've got plugins on everything. I love this SSL 4000 strip from Plugin Alliance. And I've got all of my presets in here, the way that I like it mixed, EQ'd, compressed. Same for the kick out. I've just got some highs rolled off, and then I've got the kick bus all ready with the 1176. I've got this cool thing that adds some low end. I've got the infected mushroom pusher, which is a standard if you've watched any of my other videos. And then for the snare, I have a lot of processing going on in my rack. So I really don't need too much processing on these. I just wait until it gets to the snare bus. And then I have this awesome Focusrite channel strip that I've got some light EQ and then some compression along with the ever famous infected mushroom pusher. So that's kind of the same for everything for the rest of the drums, with some basic EQs, infected mushroom pusher. The stereo rooms have the Devil Lock by Sound Toys, which is just so cool. It does this awesome distortion plus compression thing, which is really, really neat. And then all of that is going to the drum bus. So beyond that, in case I need to do some percussion overdubs, I've got shaker and tambourine tracks. I've got just random percussion tracks. And all of these have my flex mic, which is that mic back there where I'll just bring it right here, do my percussion, whether it's hand claps, shakers, tambourines, etc., or even beatboxing, which is stupid, I know, because I suck, but it ends up being really cool. And then I have some stereo percussion tracks. So this is where I'll drag samples. So I'll dig into my sample library, and then I will just drag and drop, whether it be risers or big booms, big hits, claps, whatever the case is for the song. Below that are instrument percussion tracks. So what I could do here is pull up battery. I could pull up some loops from arcade. I could get into Contact. I could pull up any number of plugins and then program from there. So that way I'm not wasting time doing shift control new, figuring out what tracks I want, and then dealing with the routing. And then beyond that are my instruments. So whenever I'm producing a song, I use this template because I'll start programming with some synth bass and then maybe add some real bass, and all of the routing is right there. Same with the acoustics, same with the electrics. And all of these are color coordinated, so that way I know exactly what I'm looking at. So if I ever tab over to the mix window, I can see, oh, here are the acoustics in the pink, electrics in the green, all the synths and keys in the blue. The light blue are gonna be the vocal, the kind of like faded blue are the BGVs, and then orange is gonna be all of my returns with reverbs. So when we tab back over, you can just see all of the tracks in order, and then I'll add plugins as needed. Then get to the keys. These are all instrument inputs, so that way, again, same thing. I can get to my instruments, plug in Absynth, plug in Contact, plug in Vacuum, you know, any of this stuff, which is just, it's cool. Arturia, and then we get to the vocal channels. Same thing, they're going through my flex channel, which is the Rupert Neve Portico 5015. which is just beautiful on anything. I put bass through it, I put vocals through it, I put my percussion through it. It sounds absolutely insane on everything. And you know, sometimes I'll need to add more vocal tracks if they're doing doubles, panning, or if they're gonna, you know, sing their own BGVs. I've got BGV tracks. Sometimes I'll need to duplicate that if we're gonna do gang vocals, anything like that. And then below are all of these returns. So here is where I'll have, you know, when you look at my sends, I've got all of these reverbs. So we saw the work tape return, we saw the kick return, the snare return, the drums return. And then what we've got are the reverbs. So I've got a room setup, a short plate setup, a plate setup, a hall, an endless, which is just a really long reverb. And then after that are my delays. So I've got a quick slap, a quarter note delay, an eighth note delay, a dotted eighth delay. And I have all of the plugins on there. So I love this Brainworks room. I love the Sound Toys little plate for the plates. I have Deverb as the hall, Deverb as the endless, and then I've got Echo Boy Jr. for the slap, and then I've got all of these Brainworks delays for eighth, dotted eighth, quarter note. Below that are my VCAs. So we'll take each individual input and take their volumes and then bring them down. So it's a really even way of bringing down instead of just throwing it all in a bus and bringing it down. So it'll actually bring it down in the correct ratio. Below that are my buses. So for example, once I'm finished tracking drums, tracking bass, all of the drum and bass and percussion get sent to this bus, and I'll put some processing on it, like the CLA mixdown, which kind of a cheap bullshit thing, but I like it. It sounds fine. It's cool. It just gives it punch, but I just hate that it's, you know, one that I don't know what it's doing. I like to know what my plugins are doing, but doesn't matter. It sounds great. Then after that, we've got the acoustic bus, then the electric bus, then the keys bus, the vocal bus, and then the effects bus. So all of the effects that we just ran through all go to their own bus because, you know, let's say everything is a little bit too hot, like it's a little too wet. Literally just pop that down a hair. And then all of these buses are going to my mix bus. And what I like to have on my mix bus are an EQ, a bus compression, and then a limiter. So I've got this Brainworks really cool fine tune mix EQ, and then I've got the Waves API 2500, and I've got all of my settings that I like. The thing that I'll adjust the most is just the ratio, but I like a slow attack and a low ratio and a fast release. And then below that, I'll do the ozone elements, and I'll just get over in here to this kind of limiter section, and then that'll end the entire chain of the whole song. Then when I'm ready to send to a client, I will just change the output and I'll send it to mix print, and what that will do is I'll arm this track and then I'll print the whole song, and then I'll export it as a WAV or an MP3. So that way I know exactly what's being sent to the client, because if you bounce something offline, if there's a little hiccup in there, or if there's something that happens and you don't listen to it before you send it to the client, you might be sending them a bum track, and I don't want to take that risk. So I record it, that way it gives me a full listen through of the entire song. And then after that, I can put in the fades, the start fade, the end fade. I can just make it sound pristine, and I know exactly what I'm sending to the client. So another important aspect to my template is having everything grouped. So you can see here how I click here, and the cursor is blinking all the way through all of my drum tracks. That means they're all a part of this group. So you can see here what tracks are in this group. And then if I want to modify it, I can tell them to follow volume, mute, pan. So if I adjust the pan of one, it'll adjust the pan of all. If I adjust the volume of one, it'll adjust the volume of all of them. What's important here is it's quick to toggle on and off. So the shortcut for that is Shift M to mute and unmute. If I'm ready to arm the tracks and record, Shift R, boom. Click 3 and I'm ready to record. That's what's really important, and I can do the same for all of these. So let's say the electrics are all too hot in my mix. I can toggle over to the mix window, and that automatically allows me to select to toggle the group on and off just by clicking the letter that's associated with the group. So in this case, E for electric guitars, toggle it on. I can toggle back over, say they're way too hot, boom, turn them down. Same thing with the keys, same thing with the vocals. That's an important aspect that I don't think should be overlooked. Other things to consider are what your tempo is set to, what your default meter is set to. I wouldn't recommend like pre-laying markers because every song is different, of course. Things that I pay attention to, for example, is I don't like my grid any smaller than a quarter note. So eighth note, that's just hard to see. It's tough when you're quickly editing tracks. My nudge value is 10 milliseconds because I find that's what I use the most. If something is a little bit off, I can chop it, tab the transient, nudge it over a little bit, boom, you're done. Other things to consider are things like your beat detective. So I have things already set inside of Beat Detective that I know that I use. So I like my sensitivity to be 40%. I like my trigger pad to be 12 milliseconds. So that way, as soon as I'm finished tracking, and if this is a song that's to like programming that needs to be spot on the grid, I can quickly get into Beat Detective, do this business, set it to 60%, sometimes more, sometimes less. Edit the smoothing, which means it's going to fill in all of the fades for every single edit that you've made. I've found that the crossfade length of 8 milliseconds is best for me and best for my sound. You may want a longer fade, you may want a shorter fade, but these are things that make your life so much easier if they are already in place. My final note would be to remember to save as you go as you're recording your song. So once you finished tracking, file, save as, and then prepare it for whatever the next step it is. So if it's editing, O2, edit, song name. And then after that, if you're ready to mix it, save as, O3, mix, song name. So that way, if there's anything that you can't undo, you can always go back. Of course, your computer is probably saving session file backups, but you just don't want to rely on that automation. You just want to make sure you've got everything in there. If you're ready to print your stems, save as, O4, print, song name. So that way, if in 2 years the artist comes back and is like, hey, I really liked this mix, but could you send me the stems without any of your EQs on it? Boom, go back to mix, save as, print, version 2, date, whatever, song name, and then you can print. So that way, nothing is ever finalized and undoable, because if you are only working out of one session and then you print everything and delete the files, there's no going back. The only way to go back is to redo, start over, retrack the song, and it's just going to take more time. Time is money. With that being said, I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something. If you've got any questions or comments or concerns, feel free to reach out to me via YouTube, Instagram, and as always, like and subscribe so I can keep making videos just like this. Thanks so much for watching.